Во студиото на Мета разговараме со доктор Maliukevičius, водечки литвански експерт за медиуми и кризни стратешки комуникации со геополитички фокус на улогата на Русија и Белорусија. Неговата истражувачка дејност вклучува теми како што се справување со дезинформации, зголемување на медиумската писменост и градење на општествена отпорност кон лажни вести и манипулации. Тоа е во посета на нашата земја со предавање и со средби со невладини организации, новинари, активисти, а со него разговараме за актуелните дезинформацијски наративи. Okay, so welcome and thank you for joining us here today. So I can see many similarities on what is happening, what I've heard of you from happening in Lithuania and in North Macedonia. For example, we had many false bomb threats in high schools and in elementary schools, and also many cyber attacks in state institutions, on the websites. They were all hacked. So how do you see here the similarity with disinformation? How do you relate this with disinformation and with with foreign influence?
You know, there is a saying: if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It probably is a duck. So it's probably the same malign actor that is doing those operations, those attacks in Baltic states as well as in Balkans. So therefore, I think we are experiencing a sophisticated information cyber attack operation even more widely in Europe. And it is done because authoritarian regimes, especially Russia, considers this a very important year in Europe, in European countries, election year, and they are trying to achieve their goals to create more chaos, distrust, to break the electoral processes and so on. And therefore, we are experiencing those attacks not just in your country but in my country as well.
And which are is there a pattern that they're using while spreading propaganda and disinformation? What's the pattern in the countries that you've been following?
I would say that the main pattern is this new type of operations where they combine cyber and information attacks together. So usually there's a hacking of, for example, news outlet or internet portal, and then some fake news or disinformation article is being inserted into this news portal, which alleges, for example, that I don't know, NATO troops committed crime, or some for example, politician is a corrupt politician, but he's specifically very anti-Putin, anti-Russian, and so on. So those are the main probably patterns. There's initial cyber attack, and then there is this creative manipulation of information, where later this information is being spread in an automated manner, which is as well important. So basically there are artificial accounts that are created, you can call it bot or troll swarms, and they are spreading further this information. So I would probably say this and add on top of that what we are especially witnessing in Lithuania is that the amount of those attacks is rising enormously in number. So we are experiencing more and more of those attacks in a short period of time. And at the same time, they are becoming more and more aggressive, physically aggressive. In Lithuania, we had, for example, several attacks where our historical monuments were desecrated by paint, throwing paint at them. And later, we understood that it was done not just in Lithuania, but in other Baltic states, Latvia, Estonia as well. And those who did that later were apprehended in Latvian-Estonian border, and they later said that they were acting on some kind of instructions that they received on social media accounts and so on. So this is how this
Telegram, probably.
Telegram channels or any other, I would call kind of extremist information bubbles, where those users are being radicalized by those propaganda narratives and so on. So this is a big challenge, especially in times of this kind of a super election year we have in Europe.
And can you define what's the main goal for all of this?
I would put it quite simply. We previously considered that the goal of Russian influence operations is to create kind of a more sympathies for Russian regime, for Russian ideology. I would consider those operations as without ideology. And their main target now is just simply to create more chaos inside the neighboring countries, in order to make us look the other way into our internal problems and stop supporting Ukraine in the defense from Russian aggression. So the main goal is basically to play this kind of a operation of chaos in Europe generally and make us weaker in a sense.
Well, North Macedonia is actually quite small country, so that's why I would like to know what would be the goal, or what would they like to reach here with the Russian influence, for example, here or in the Western Balkans.
So usually the target of those attacks are, as Russia considers the main enemy, those actors that support NATO, that support European integration, be it civic NGOs, activists, be it political parties or politicians. In the end, they become the target of those nasty disinformation campaigns. They being trolled, they are being physically, sometimes even abused and so on, in order to really break their motivation to continue their activities. I would add that there's probably difference looking into Baltic states and then Balkan states, that in our case, we have a very clear external neighbor and external factor that influences those, kind of a disinformation campaigns and so on. Maybe in your case, but I'm not knowledgeable, in details to comment on that. But in your case, it could be more your internal challenges and even internal actors that use those aggressive means to achieve their goals. Mm-hmm. And usually this is how, Kremlin and other authoritarian regimes are doing this campaign. They are simply enabling malign actors, proxies inside other countries to continue those disinformation campaigns that Kremlin, for example, starts. They're just supplying them with some, messaging templates, some tools, sometimes money, and it's classical corruption at the same time, how those operations are done. And then it becomes internal problem that is created, sometimes created inside, sometimes outside, but it doesn't matter from Kremlin perspective.
You have, you've been learning this a lot of time. I guess you have come into the psychology of this. What was your
interest?
Yes.
Yeah, very good question. I mean, my story with that is that back in 2000, I got interested in specifically new Russian laws that were being implemented, and they were called information security doctrine that Putin put forward as an idea how Russia would take control of its information environment to mobilize Putin's power, to fight off any foreign influence, as he considered. And I was interested from my perspective how media and information policies can be used by this, at the time, not so clear authoritarian leader. But he was already pushing forward those strategies, how he would consolidate his power. And later I got with this, I wrote a dissertation which is called Russian Information Geopolitics, where I try to explain how Russia transformed traditional politics of divide and conquer into media geopolitics, where it is not so much important how you control geographical territories, but how you control and fight for mental territories in, people's minds, in media and so on. And this is how I stayed with this topic, and it is quite clear that it's becoming more and more topical in many countries. And I'm very glad to have this opportunity to share my insights with media, civic NGOs here in North Macedonia, and as well in your university with students. We had an excellent discussion. I'm very glad how students were interested and involved in this.
Yes, but do you have any tools on which the students, the activists, the NGOs, the media, or the state should have to deal with this problem, because it's like a whole science?
Absolutely.
So what should everyone do in its own field to fight this disinformation and propaganda and the influence that's been spreading for so long?
I think the main idea is to enable every citizen to have very easily accessible tools to really debunk any disinformation campaigns. Because it's not just about Putin's disinformation, it's about financial fraud at the same time. It's about, so civic and cyber security risks online and so on and so on. So it's about open source intelligence tools like checking photos, geolocating the visuals and images, checking, for example, whether text was artificially created or not, and teaching those tools with general public. But more maybe systemic from country perspective, a really important approach it's called whole of society approach. Meaning that it's not just a challenge for the government or just NGOs or civic activists. Everyone has to take its part in defending our democracy and in defending our values. And that means that in the government there should be a coordinating body of reacting to information attacks. In Lithuania, we have this National Center for Crisis Management, which counter-reacts in those cases. Then media has to play its part, because media is probably the most effective filter from disinformation. And in this respect, it's about cybersecurity of media outlets for them not to be hacked. It's about, professionalism of journalists. It's about all debunking initiatives and so on. Civic, activists have to play a part, and I think you are doing an excellent job in your, public kind of a deconstructing of those disinformation campaigns in your initiatives. Everyone has to realize that this is a, systemic, holistic challenge. And it will not be dealt just with, silver bullet and just government will solve everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.